What if the smallest prayer you whisper without thinking carries more weight in heaven than years of carefully planned devotion? What if the single Hail Mary you murmur while walking, tired, distracted, or broken, becomes the very thread that pulls a soul out of darkness and into light? Padre Pio believed this with an intensity that unsettled even those closest to him, because he did not believe it as a theory, but as something he had seen unfold in the invisible world again and again. He warned that people search for extraordinary prayers while ignoring the extraordinary power hidden inside the simplest one, and he said that this blindness is one of the great spiritual losses of our time. To him, the Hail Mary was not a gentle devotional habit or a comforting repetition learned in childhood, but a living force that moved heaven itself. He once said, with trembling certainty, that if humanity truly understood the power contained in a single Hail Mary, churches would never fall silent and no soul would ever be forgotten. This conviction did not come from books or theology, but from encounters that marked him deeply, moments when heaven allowed him to see what happens when a prayer that seems insignificant on earth touches eternity. Padre Pio lived surrounded by suffering, confession, blood, fatigue, and constant spiritual battle. Yet among all the miracles and visions he witnessed, nothing astonished him more than how often salvation arrived not through great acts, but through one small prayer offered with love. He often said that heaven moves quietly, not violently, and that grace prefers to enter the world through humility rather than spectacle. The Hail Mary, he explained, is humility spoken aloud, the voice of a child calling for a mother. He believed that Mary listens not to eloquence but to trust, and that the shortest prayer, when offered sincerely, becomes irresistible to her heart. This belief shaped the rhythm of his entire life. He prayed the Hail Mary while walking through corridors, while waiting between confessions, while bleeding from the stigmata, while barely able to stand from exhaustion. To those who questioned why he repeated the same prayer endlessly, he answered simply that every repetition was a new act of love, and love, he said, never repeats itself in vain. The mystery began to reveal itself to others, one quiet evening when he was praying alone before the Blessed Sacrament, motionless, absorbed in silence. A friar, watching from a distance, noticed a sudden change in his expression, as if sorrow and joy collided in his eyes at the same time. When Padre Pio finally rose, tears streamed down his face, not tears of pain, but of overwhelming emotion. Asked what had happened, he replied that a soul had come to thank him, not for years of prayer, not for a novena, not for a mass, but for a single Hail Mary he had whispered long ago and completely forgotten. Heaven, he said, had not forgotten. That moment shattered the common assumption that small prayers disappear into nothingness. Padre Pio explained that the soul had been waiting, not for extraordinary intercession, but for one drop of mercy, one opening through which grace could flow. That opening came through a prayer so small, the one who prayed it never remembered doing so. This revelation changed the way he spoke about prayer forever. He began warning people not to measure prayer by feeling, focus, or emotional intensity, but by love. He insisted that distracted prayers, offered with sincere intention, are often more powerful than perfectly focused prayers offered without humility. He said that the Hail Mary works not because of our concentration, but because of Mary's fidelity. When a soul calls her name, even absent-mindedly, she responds. He described her as a mother who does not analyze the quality of a cry before responding, but runs toward it instinctively. This is why, he said, the Hail Mary reaches places no other prayer can reach. It enters moments of fear, panic, weakness, and desperation where longer prayers cannot form. It becomes the last rope thrown to souls slipping into darkness. Padre Pio believed that many people are saved not because they lived heroic spiritual lives, but because someone, somewhere, whispered a Hail Mary for them at the right moment. He warned that pride blinds people to this truth because pride wants salvation to be earned, calculated, and deserved. The Hail Mary destroys this illusion by revealing that salvation often arrives as pure gift. He said this is why the devil hates small prayers, because they bypass pride and go straight to mercy. He often told his spiritual children that the Hail Mary carries a double movement, lifting the one who prays it and the one who receives its grace. It purifies the heart of the speaker while opening a door for someone else. This dual action, he said, makes it one of the most dangerous prayers to evil, because it multiplies grace silently. Padre Pio also emphasized that the power of the Hail Mary does not depend on the worthiness of the one praying. In fact, he said, sinners often unleash its power more freely than the righteous, because they pray without expectation, clinging only to mercy. He told people not to wait until they felt holy to pray, because holiness is not the prerequisite for prayer. Prayer is the path to holiness. The Hail Mary, he said, is the prayer of the weak, and therefore the prayer God hears most quickly. He also warned against the temptation to underestimate childhood prayers. Many people, he said, will be astonished in eternity to discover that prayers they whispered as children without understanding became the decisive moments of grace for souls they loved. Heaven keeps these prayers like seeds, waiting patiently for the right moment to bring them to life. This understanding filled Padre Pio with awe and urgency. He realized that every moment carries eternal weight, that nothing spoken in love disappears, and that even the smallest prayer can become the hinge on which a soul's destiny turns. For him, the Hail Mary was not repetition, but rescue. Not routine, but relationship. Not habit, but hope. And he wanted the world to know that when a person prays even one Hail Mary, sincerely and humbly, something always moves in the invisible world, even if the earth remains silent. Padre Pio went further in explaining why a single Hail Mary carries such hidden force, saying that its power does not come from repetition or rhythm, but from the mystery it contains, because within that short prayer, the entire story of salvation is quietly present. He explained that when a soul says, Hail Mary, it is not merely greeting the Virgin, it is standing at the moment of the Annunciation again, where heaven waited for a human yes, and history changed forever. Every Hail Mary, he said, reopens that door. It allows grace to enter the world again, not symbolically, but truly. This is why he insisted that the prayer shakes the spiritual realm, even when the one praying feels nothing. He often warned people not to confuse spiritual effectiveness with emotional sensation. Heaven, he said, is moved by surrender, not by feelings. A prayer spoken dryly, but sincerely can unleash more grace than one spoken with tears, but mixed with self-focus. Padre Pio learned this through countless encounters with souls who appeared to him unexpectedly, souls who arrived not because of long devotions, but because of a single moment when someone chose love over indifference. He described these moments as spiritual intersections, points where eternity touches time briefly and decisively. He said that Mary is the guardian of these intersections, watching constantly for the smallest opening through which she can act. This is why he believed the Hail Mary is never wasted. Even when it seems to fall into silence, it is stored in her heart, ready to be released when a soul is most vulnerable. He once explained that many people misunderstand prayer because they imagine it works like a request that must be immediately answered. In reality, he said, prayer is more like placing something into God's hands and trusting Him to decide when and where it is needed. The Hail Mary is the purest form of this trust because it does not specify conditions, outcomes, or rewards. It simply entrusts. Padre Pio also taught that the Hail Mary has a unique authority because it is rooted in Scripture itself, in the words spoken by the angel and inspired by the Holy Spirit. He believed that every time these words are spoken, they echo with the same authority they carried at the beginning of salvation history. This is why demons, he said, react violently to the prayer even when spoken quietly. They recognize the authority of humility, because humility is what defeated them in the first place. Pride fell through refusal, and grace entered through consent. The Hail Mary is consent spoken again and again. He also revealed that one of the greatest misconceptions about prayer is the belief that quantity alone saves souls. While he encouraged the rosary and perseverance, he repeatedly insisted that one Hail Mary prayed with real surrender can outweigh thousands prayed mechanically. This teaching disturbed some people because it removed control. It meant salvation could hinge on something small, unseen, and unmeasurable. Padre Pio accepted this mystery with reverence, saying that God delights in hiding his greatest works inside simplicity so that no one can claim credit. He often spoke about how the Hail Mary reaches souls at their most defenseless moment, the final breath. He said that at death, when the soul can no longer hide behind distractions or excuses, a single remembered prayer can suddenly rise like a flame. He described it as a familiar voice breaking through fear. Many souls, he said, recognize Mary at that moment not because they lived devout lives, but because someone once called her name for them. This recognition can soften even the hardest heart. He witnessed this in dying sinners who had rejected faith for decades, but suddenly whispered her name without knowing why. Padre Pio believed these moments were not random, but the release of prayers stored for years, sometimes decades, waiting for the exact second when resistance would collapse. He also taught that the Hail Mary forms a hidden network of grace connecting strangers. A prayer whispered by one person may save someone they will never meet. This anonymity, he said, is part of God's design because it keeps love pure. If people knew whom their prayers saved, pride would corrupt the gift. Heaven prefers secrecy. Padre Pio also warned that the devil works tirelessly to convince people that small prayers do not matter, because discouragement is one of his most effective weapons. If a person believes their prayer is insignificant, they stop praying. He said that stopping prayer does far more damage than praying imperfectly. Imperfect prayer still opens the door. Silence closes it. This is why he urged people to pray, even when distracted, tired, or bored. He said that perseverance itself is a form of humility. God blesses abundantly. He also explained that the Hail Mary teaches the soul how to receive grace, not just how to ask for it. By honoring Mary, the soul learns receptivity, the posture of allowing God to act. This posture, he said, is essential for spiritual growth because many people pray while secretly resisting change. The Hail Mary dissolves this resistance gently by placing the soul under Mary's guidance. He believed that those who pray the Hail Mary regularly become more docile to grace without realizing it. Their hearts soften, their judgments become less harsh, their pride weakens. This transformation often happens unnoticed, but its effects are profound. Padre Pio also spoke about the communal dimension of the prayer. He said that every Hail Mary strengthens the entire church, not just the individual. It is like adding one more stone to a bridge that countless souls will cross. Even if one stone seems small, without it the structure is weaker. He believed the modern world suffers spiritually because too many small prayers have disappeared from daily life, replaced by noise, speed, and self-absorption. The Hail Mary, he said, interrupts this noise and reintroduces heaven quietly. He often encouraged people to pray it while working, traveling, waiting, or suffering, because these moments are fertile ground for grace, precisely because they are ordinary. He also revealed that Mary responds especially quickly to prayers offered for others rather than for oneself. A single Hail Mary prayed for a suffering soul, he said, carries a particular fragrance in heaven. It reflects selflessness, which mirrors God's own love. He believed that many miracles attributed to Padre Pio's intercession were actually the fruit of Hail Marys, prayed by unknown people whose prayers he simply helped direct. This conviction kept him humble. He never claimed power for himself, always pointing to Mary as the channel. In his final years, as his strength faded, he relied almost exclusively on the Hail Mary. When longer prayers exhausted him, he whispered it slowly, sometimes barely audible. Those near him noticed that peace followed wherever he prayed it. Padre Pio believed this peace was not psychological, but spiritual, the settling of grace. He wanted the world to understand that heaven is not moved by eloquence, intelligence, or effort, but by love expressed in trust. And he believed there was no purer expression of that trust than one simple Hail Mary spoken with a sincere heart. Padre Pio continued to unfold the mystery by explaining that the Hail Mary does not act only outwardly, freeing souls or changing circumstances, but works first and most deeply within the one who prays it, reshaping the soul in ways that often go unnoticed until much later. He said that every sincere Hail Mary leaves an imprint on the heart, like a seal pressed gently into warm wax, forming the soul gradually into the likeness of Mary herself, whose entire life was one uninterrupted prayer of availability to God. He taught that when a person repeats the Hail Mary faithfully, even without understanding its depth, their interior world slowly changes, not through effort, but through exposure. Just as fabric left in sunlight absorbs warmth without trying, the soul exposed to this prayer absorbs humility, patience, and trust. Padre Pio observed that people who prayed the Hail Mary daily often became quieter inside, less reactive, less anxious about outcomes, because Mary teaches the soul to rest in God's timing rather than demand immediate answers. He said this interior transformation is one of the prayer's greatest miracles because it prepares the soul to receive grace without resisting it. Many people, he explained, unknowingly block God's work through fear, control, or self-judgment, but the Hail Mary loosens these knots gently, without force. He often compared the prayer to a key that does not break the lock, but fits it perfectly, opening doors that were never meant to be forced. Padre Pio also revealed that the Hail Mary has a purifying effect on memory, healing wounds from the past that people may not even remember consciously. He said, Mary touches the places in the soul where pain has been buried, not to reopen them violently, but to bring light and meaning to what once felt only like loss. This is why some people feel sudden emotion while praying the Hail Mary, even when nothing specific comes to mind. Padre Pio explained that these moments are signs of hidden healing, grace reaching backward into the soul's history, restoring what was fragmented. He believed that Mary works especially in the realm of forgotten suffering, the small humiliations, disappointments, and fears that shaped a person silently. The Hail Mary, he said, is particularly powerful because it does not analyze or explain pain, it simply offers it. In this offering, healing occurs without words. He also taught that the prayer trains the soul to accept dependence, something modern people often resist. To say, Hail Mary sincerely is to admit need, to acknowledge that one cannot save oneself. Padre Pio said, this admission is terrifying for pride, but liberating for the heart. Souls who cling to independence, he warned, struggle spiritually not because God withholds grace, but because they refuse to receive it. The Hail Mary gently dismantles this resistance by placing the soul under Mary's care, where weakness is not condemned, but welcomed. He noticed that hardened hearts often softened not through sermons or arguments, but through the steady repetition of this prayer, because it bypasses intellectual defenses and speaks directly to the heart. Padre Pio also emphasized that the Hail Mary has a mysterious ability to restore order in chaos, especially within families. He saw how households torn by conflict sometimes found peace not through confrontation, but through one member quietly praying the Hail Mary daily. He said that Mary moves through families invisibly, rearranging hearts without announcement. Forgiveness appears where resentment once lived, patience where anger ruled, tenderness where coldness hardened relationships. These changes often seem natural or coincidental, but Padre Pio insisted they are the fruit of prayer working unseen. He believed that Mary prefers this quiet method because it protects freedom and avoids spectacle. Another dimension Padre Pio revealed was the prayer's power at moments of temptation. He said that a single Hail Mary spoken at the first stirrings of temptation can prevent a fall entirely, not by suppressing desire, but by redirecting attention. Temptation, he explained, thrives in isolation, when the soul feels alone. The Hail Mary breaks that isolation instantly by calling Mary into the moment. Even when temptation does not disappear immediately, the prayer weakens its grip, giving the soul space to choose rightly. Padre Pio often advised penitents to pray the Hail Mary immediately when tempted, without debate or analysis, because delay strengthens temptation while humility dissolves it. He also taught that the prayer has a protective effect on the senses, particularly the eyes and imagination, which are frequent gateways for sin. By invoking Mary regularly, the soul learns to see differently, to desire purity not out of fear, but out of love. He noticed that people devoted to the Hail Mary developed a quieter imagination, less cluttered by intrusive thoughts, because Mary guards the inner vision of those who trust her. Padre Pio further explained that the prayer aligns the soul with truth, making self-deception harder. Many people live comfortably with small compromises, he said, not because they are evil, but because they avoid silence. The Hail Mary introduces silence into the heart, and in silence, truth emerges gently but clearly. This is why some people resist praying it consistently, because it gradually reveals what needs healing or change. Padre Pio insisted this revelation is always merciful, never condemning, but it does require honesty. He also spoke about the Hail Mary as a preparation for death, long before the final hour arrives. He said that those who pray it throughout life will recognize Mary at death as a familiar presence rather than a stranger. This familiarity, he believed, removes much fear from the passage between worlds. He described death for such souls not as a shock, but as a continuation, a hand taken rather than a door slammed shut. He believed that Mary accompanies souls at death who have called her name in life, not because they earned it, but because love remembers love. Padre Pio often returned to the theme that heaven measures greatness differently than earth. On earth, effort, achievement, and recognition dominate. In heaven, he said, trust is everything. The Hail Mary is trust made audible. It is the voice of the soul saying, I place myself in your care. He believed that when this trust becomes habitual, the soul lives already half in heaven because it no longer clings desperately to control. This interior freedom, he said, is one of the greatest graces Mary gives through this simple prayer. He also warned that people should not wait to feel worthy before praying it. Worthiness, he said, is a human category that does not apply to grace. Mary responds not to merit, but to need. The weaker the soul feels, the more fitting the prayer becomes. Padre Pio saw this paradox repeatedly. Those who believed themselves unworthy often received the greatest graces because they approached with humility. In this sense, the Hail Mary becomes a refuge for the broken, a prayer that does not demand strength, knowledge, or consistency, only openness. Padre Pio wanted the world to understand that the true power of the Hail Mary lies not in extraordinary experiences, but in its quiet fidelity, its ability to reshape the soul day after day until love becomes natural and fear loses its authority. Padre Pio also spoke about the Hail Mary as a prayer that educates the soul in spiritual vigilance, teaching it to remain awake in a world that constantly lulls the heart into forgetfulness. He believed that one of the greatest dangers to faith is not open hostility, but distraction, the slow erosion of attention that leaves the soul numb to God's presence. The Hail Mary, he said, interrupts this numbness gently, like a bell rung softly but persistently, reminding the soul of who it belongs to. He noticed that people who prayed it throughout the day, not only in formal prayer times but in the midst of ordinary tasks, developed an interior alertness that protected them from spiritual drift. This vigilance was not anxious or rigid, but peaceful, a quiet awareness that God is near. Padre Pio explained that Mary trains the soul to recognize grace as it passes, much like a mother teaching a child to notice subtle changes in the weather before a storm. Through the repetition of the Hail Mary, the soul becomes sensitive to movements of consolation and warning, learning when to slow down, when to resist, and when to trust. He believed this sensitivity is essential for perseverance, because many falls happen not through deliberate choice, but through inattention. The Hail Mary, he said, keeps the soul awake without exhausting it. He also revealed that the prayer has a unique way of restoring hope when the spiritual life feels stagnant. Many people, he observed, become discouraged when they do not see progress, mistaking dryness for failure. Padre Pio insisted that dryness often indicates deeper purification, and that the Hail Mary is especially effective during these seasons because it does not depend on feeling. It carries the soul forward when motivation fades. He compared it to walking through fog, where you cannot see far ahead, but each step still brings you closer to your destination. He said Mary walks beside souls in these moments, asking only that they keep moving. He also emphasized that the Hail Mary is a prayer that sanctifies time itself. By praying it repeatedly, moments that would otherwise be lost to boredom, irritation, or impatience are transformed into offerings. Padre Pio believed this sanctification of time is one of the prayer's hidden strengths because it redeems ordinary life from meaninglessness. He often said that most people do not lack opportunities for holiness, they lack awareness. The Hail Mary cultivates this awareness by weaving prayer into the fabric of daily existence. He also taught that the prayer has a mysterious ability to heal relationships, not only between people, but between the soul and itself. Many individuals, he observed, live divided within, burdened by guilt, regret, or unresolved shame. The Hail Mary, he said, invites Mary into these fractured spaces where self-accusation has replaced mercy. He saw how people who prayed it consistently began to treat themselves with greater gentleness, not excusing sin, but believing in the possibility of change. This interior reconciliation, he believed, often precedes exterior healing. He also revealed that the Hail Mary strengthens obedience, not as blind submission, but as loving alignment. Obedience, he said, is difficult because it challenges the illusion of control. Mary's life was obedience lived freely, without resentment. By invoking her, the soul learns this same freedom. Padre Pio noticed that people devoted to the Hail Mary often accepted God's will more readily, even when it contradicted their desires. This acceptance did not remove sorrow, but it prevented bitterness. He believed this was one of Mary's greatest gifts, the ability to suffer without losing love. He also spoke about the prayer's role in guarding purity of intention. Many good works, he said, become corrupted by the desire for recognition or control. The Hail Mary purifies intention by continually redirecting attention away from the self. It reminds the soul that all fruit comes from grace, not effort. This humility, he believed, protects spiritual works from becoming sources of pride. Padre Pio also emphasized that the prayer has a particular power in moments of fear, not because it explains fear away, but because it introduces presence. Fear thrives in isolation, but Mary's presence dissolves isolation. He said that when a person prays the Hail Mary sincerely, they are never alone, even if nothing outward changes. This companionship, he believed, is often enough to restore courage. He also revealed that the Hail Mary is especially effective when prayed for those who resist prayer themselves. Some souls, he said, are too wounded, angry, or confused to pray. For them, Mary accepts the prayer of another as if it were their own. This substitution, he believed, reflects the deepest logic of love, where one carries another when they cannot walk. He witnessed this in families where one faithful member prayed quietly for years, while others remained distant from faith. Often, he said, conversion came unexpectedly, long after hope seemed reasonable. He also taught that the prayer protects against despair by anchoring the soul in relationship rather than outcome. Despair, he said, arises when a person believes their future depends entirely on their own strength. The Hail Mary dismantles this illusion by placing the soul under Mary's care. It teaches trust not as optimism, but as surrender. He also spoke about the prayer's effect on conscience. By repeatedly invoking Mary, the soul becomes less tolerant of falsehood, not through harsh self-judgment, but through growing love for truth. Padre Pio believed Mary does not accuse, she illuminates. Under her gaze, the soul sees itself clearly and desires change without compulsion. He also emphasized that the Hail Mary fosters gratitude, an often neglected virtue. Gratitude, he said, protects the soul from entitlement and resentment. Those who pray the Hail Mary regularly begin to recognize grace in small things, because the prayer itself is an act of thanksgiving for God's favor. This gratitude, he believed, attracts further grace, creating a cycle of humility and gift. He also warned that the simplicity of the prayer should not lead to familiarity without reverence. He encouraged people to pray it attentively when possible, but never to abandon it when attention fails. The prayer's strength, he said, does not collapse under weakness. Finally, Padre Pio wanted people to understand that the Hail Mary prepares the soul for ultimate union with God by teaching it how to receive. Heaven, he said, is not seized by effort, but entered through trust. The Hail Mary is training for this trust, repeated until surrender becomes natural. Through it, the soul learns to rest, to hope, and to wait without fear, confident that love is already at work, even when nothing seems to move. Padre Pio also revealed that the Hail Mary possesses a hidden power to dismantle spiritual pride in ways that even long examinations of conscience sometimes cannot. He observed that pride often disguises itself as strength, competence, or even religious certainty, convincing the soul that it is already aligned with God. The Hail Mary quietly undermines this illusion because it places the soul in a posture of dependence. To say, "Pray for us sinners," repeatedly, he explained, is to accept one's fragility again and again, even on days when one feels faithful or virtuous. This repetition slowly erodes the false image of self-sufficiency and replaces it with truth. Padre Pio believed that this is why the prayer irritates the enemy of souls so intensely, because it strips away the lie that holiness can be achieved without humility. He said that a person who prays the Hail Mary sincerely cannot remain proud for long, because Mary does not coexist with arrogance. Her presence gently exposes the gap between appearance and reality, not to condemn, but to invite transformation. He also spoke about the prayer's unique ability to restore order within the soul when emotions become overwhelming. Many people, he noticed, are ruled by interior chaos, anxiety, anger, resentment, or fear that seems uncontrollable. The Hail Mary, he said, does not suppress these emotions but reorders them. By placing Mary at the center, the soul learns to let feelings pass without allowing them to dominate. He compared this to a storm at sea. The waves may be violent, but when a steady hand holds the rudder, the ship does not capsize. Mary, he said, becomes that steady presence through the prayer. He also emphasized that the Hail Mary strengthens perseverance more than any other short prayer. Perseverance, he explained, is not dramatic endurance, but quiet fidelity when nothing feels rewarding. Many people abandon prayer not because they reject God, but because they grow tired of waiting. The Hail Mary carries the soul through this fatigue because it asks very little while offering much. Padre Pio noticed that those who committed to praying even a few Hail Marys daily, especially during dry periods, were less likely to abandon the spiritual life altogether. The prayer became a thread connecting them to grace even when motivation vanished. He also taught that the Hail Mary has a special role in protecting the soul during moments of moral confusion. In times when conscience feels clouded and right and wrong seem blurred, the prayer invites clarity without argument. Mary does not debate, he said. She reflects truth by her presence. Under her gaze, the soul remembers who it is and what it was created for. This remembrance often precedes conversion. Padre Pio also spoke about the prayer's mysterious influence on memory. He believed that Mary heals not only present wounds, but also the way the past is remembered. Many people, he said, are trapped by memories that replay with bitterness or shame. The Hail Mary softens these memories, not by erasing them, but by bathing them in mercy. Over time, he observed, people who prayed it regularly began to remember painful events with less self-hatred and more compassion. This interior healing allowed them to move forward instead of remaining imprisoned by regret. He also emphasized that the Hail Mary is a prayer of alignment, aligning the will of the soul with the will of God through Mary's consent. He often reminded people that Mary's greatness lies not in power, but in her yes. Every Hail Mary, he said, echoes that yes in the soul, training it to consent even when understanding is incomplete. This alignment produces peace, not because circumstances improve, but because resistance diminishes. He also revealed that the prayer has an unexpected effect on patience. Patience, he said, is difficult because it requires trusting God's timing. The Hail Mary cultivates patience by repeatedly placing the soul in the present moment. Each prayer is brief, complete in itself, asking nothing except intercession. This simplicity prevents impatience from escalating into despair. He also believed that the Hail Mary guards the soul against comparison, one of the most subtle spiritual poisons. Comparison, he said, leads either to pride or discouragement. Mary's humility dissolves comparison by reminding the soul that holiness is personal, not competitive. Those devoted to the Hail Mary, he noticed, were less concerned with measuring themselves against others and more focused on fidelity. He also taught that the prayer strengthens trust in divine mercy, especially for those haunted by repeated failures. Many souls, he said, fall into despair not because they sin, but because they sin again. The Hail Mary interrupts this cycle by redirecting attention from failure to relationship. Mary does not demand perfection before interceding. She intercedes precisely because imperfection persists. Padre Pio insisted that this truth saves many souls from abandoning confession altogether. He also spoke about the prayer's role in preparing the soul for suffering. Suffering, he said, becomes unbearable when it feels meaningless. The Hail Mary anchors suffering in love, transforming it from isolation into offering. He often told people that Mary understands suffering without explanation. She stood beneath the cross without answers, yet without rebellion. By praying the Hail Mary in suffering, the soul learns this same stance, remaining open even when understanding fails. He also revealed that the prayer has a particular efficacy when offered in moments of temptation. Temptation, he said, gains strength through urgency. The Hail Mary slows the moment just enough to allow grace to intervene. He encouraged people to pray it immediately when tempted, not after deliberation. Even one Hail Mary, he said, can fracture the momentum of sin. He also emphasized that the prayer is especially powerful when prayed for those who have lost faith entirely. Mary, he said, reaches where arguments cannot. She enters through memory, longing, and wounded affection. Many conversions, he believed, begin not with intellectual conviction, but with a remembered Hail Mary whispered by someone else. He also taught that the prayer shapes the soul's final disposition at death. The habit of entrusting oneself to Mary daily prepares the soul to surrender peacefully when the final moment arrives. He believed that those who prayed the Hail Mary throughout life would instinctively turn to Mary at death, even if consciousness faded. Finally, Padre Pio insisted that the Hail Mary is not meant to replace other prayers, but to sustain them. It is the prayer that remains when all others feel impossible. Through it, the soul learns that faith does not depend on eloquence, strength, or clarity, but on a simple, repeated act of trust, offered again and again, until trust itself becomes the soul's language. Padre Pio also taught that the Hail Mary has a unique power to awaken dormant faith in souls who believe they have already lost it. He explained that faith rarely disappears all at once. It erodes quietly through neglect, disappointment, and unhealed wounds. Many people, he said, stop believing not because they reject God, but because they feel abandoned, unheard, or unworthy. The Hail Mary bypasses these intellectual and emotional barriers because it does not argue or explain. It simply places the soul back into the presence of a mother who never abandons her children. Padre Pio observed that even people who claimed they no longer believed could still whisper a Hail Mary in moments of crisis. That instinct, he said, was not coincidence. It was the echo of grace planted long ago. He believed that Mary preserves faith like an ember hidden beneath ashes, waiting for breath. The Hail Mary becomes that breath. He also revealed that the prayer has a profound effect on the conscience, sharpening it without crushing it. Conscience, he said, can become either dull through repeated compromise or overly harsh through fear. The Hail Mary restores balance by bringing the soul into contact with truth wrapped in mercy. Under Mary's intercession, the soul begins to recognize sin without despair and goodness without pride. This clarity often leads people back to confession, not out of fear, but out of desire for restoration. Padre Pio also spoke about the prayer's ability to heal relationships indirectly. Many conflicts, he explained, persist because hearts harden on both sides. The Hail Mary softens the heart of the one who prays, which often changes the dynamic even if the other person remains unchanged. He witnessed countless reconciliations that began not with confrontation, but with one person quietly praying Hail Marys for the other. Mary, he said, works silently in both hearts, loosening resentment and opening paths that human effort cannot force. He also emphasized the prayer's role in breaking generational wounds. Families, he observed, often carry patterns of anger, addiction, fear, or emotional distance across generations. The Hail Mary interrupts these patterns because it introduces a new presence into the family's spiritual history. He believed that when one person begins praying it faithfully, especially for ancestors and descendants, something shifts beyond the visible. Mary enters the family line as a healing presence, gradually untangling what has been knotted for decades. Padre Pio also taught that the prayer has a special power over fear of death. Fear of death, he said, often masks fear of judgment or separation. The Hail Mary reframes death not as abandonment, but as return. Mary, who stood at both the manger and the cross, understands the passage from life to eternity. Those who entrust themselves to her daily, he believed, experience less terror at the thought of death because they do not imagine facing it alone. He also spoke about the prayer's effect on loneliness. Loneliness, he said, is one of the deepest wounds of the modern soul. Even surrounded by people, many feel unseen. The Hail Mary counters this isolation by reminding the soul that it is known and remembered. Mary's intercession affirms presence, even in silence. Padre Pio believed that many souls survive despair not because circumstances improve, but because the Hail Mary assures them they are not forgotten. He also emphasized that the prayer strengthens obedience, not blind obedience, but trusting obedience rooted in love. Mary's entire life, he said, was obedience without bitterness. Each Hail Mary invites the soul into that same posture, making obedience less about fear of punishment and more about alignment with love. This transformation, he observed, often leads people to accept difficult duties with greater peace. He also revealed that the prayer has a quiet but powerful influence on vocational discernment. Many people, he said, struggle to know their purpose. The Hail Mary clarifies vocation not by revealing detailed plans, but by purifying desire. Under Mary's guidance, the soul learns to desire what leads closer to God rather than what merely satisfies ego. Padre Pio saw this prayer guide countless priests, religious and lay people toward their calling without dramatic visions, simply through sustained interior peace. He also spoke about the prayer's effect on time. The Hail Mary, he said, sanctifies ordinary moments. By inserting prayer into daily routines, walking, working, resting, the soul learns that holiness is not confined to sacred spaces. Mary enters kitchens, streets, hospital rooms, and workplaces through this prayer. Padre Pio believed this was one of its greatest strengths, transforming ordinary life into continuous offering. He also emphasized that the prayer protects against despair during prolonged suffering. Long-term suffering, he said, wears down hope more than acute pain. The Hail Mary sustains hope because it does not promise immediate relief but companionship. Mary does not remove the cross, but she remains beneath it. This presence, he said, often gives the strength needed to endure another day. He also taught that the prayer guards against spiritual isolation. People often believe their struggles are unique or shameful. The Hail Mary reconnects them to the communion of saints, reminding them they are part of a vast family of souls who have suffered, prayed, fallen, and risen. Padre Pio believed that Mary uses this prayer to weave souls together across time and space, creating unseen solidarity. He also revealed that the prayer has a mysterious role in spiritual warfare. Without dramatizing it, he said that every Hail Mary weakens the influence of evil because it invokes humility, obedience, and love, the very virtues evil cannot tolerate. He encouraged people to pray it, especially when feeling attacked, confused, or discouraged, trusting that Mary knows where to apply its power. Finally, Padre Pio insisted that the Hail Mary teaches the soul how to love correctly. Many people, he said, love possessively, anxiously, or conditionally. Mary's love, expressed through the prayer, trains the soul in self-giving love, love that releases rather than controls. Over time, he observed, those devoted to the Hail Mary became gentler, less reactive, more patient, not because they forced themselves to change, but because Mary gradually reshaped their hearts. He believed that this slow transformation was the true miracle of the prayer, not spectacular signs, but enduring conversion, quietly preparing the soul for eternity. Padre Pio concluded his teachings on the power of a single Hail Mary with a conviction that grew stronger as his life drew closer to its end. This prayer is not meant to impress heaven, but to open the human heart completely to mercy. He believed that the greatest danger for the soul is not weakness, distraction, or even repeated failure, but forgetting how to ask for help with humility. The Hail Mary preserves this humility because it places the soul in a constant state of petition, acknowledging both the greatness of God and the smallness of the human condition. Padre Pio often said that when a soul prays the Hail Mary sincerely, it steps out of isolation and into relationship, and relationship is where salvation unfolds. He insisted that many people misunderstand holiness as moral achievement, when in reality, holiness is sustained dependence on grace. The Hail Mary teaches this dependence gently, without accusation, without pressure, simply by repeating the truth that we need intercession. He also revealed that the prayer prepares the soul for judgment, not by eliminating sin instantly, but by forming the habit of surrender. At the final moment of life, he said, the soul will not be asked how impressive its prayers were, but whether it learned to trust. Those who prayed the Hail Mary throughout life, even imperfectly, even distractedly, would recognize that moment instinctively as another act of trust, another hand extended toward mercy. Padre Pio believed that this recognition often determines whether the soul opens or closes itself at the moment of death. He also spoke about the prayer's role in healing fear of God. Many people, he said, fear God not because God is frightening, but because they project their own wounded experiences onto him. The Hail Mary corrects this distortion by placing Mary between the soul and its fear, not as a barrier, but as a translator of love. Through her, the soul learns that God's justice is not opposed to tenderness. Padre Pio observed that people devoted to the Hail Mary gradually replaced fear-based religion with filial confidence. This shift, he said, changes everything. It transforms obedience from burden into response, repentance from humiliation into relief, and prayer from obligation into refuge. He also emphasized that the Hail Mary is a school of patience with oneself. Many souls abandon prayer because they grow frustrated with their own inconsistency. The simplicity of this prayer allows the soul to return again and again without shame. Mary does not count how many times the prayer was said well or poorly. She receives each one as it is offered. Padre Pio believed this is why the Hail Mary is especially powerful for those recovering from spiritual burnout. It allows healing without demands. He also taught that the prayer creates interior silence, not by eliminating thoughts, but by giving them a place to rest. In the rhythm of repeated prayer, anxious thoughts lose their urgency. They are no longer suppressed, but gently displaced. Over time, he said, the soul begins to experience a quiet presence beneath the noise. This presence is not emptiness, but companionship. He also insisted that the Hail Mary protects the soul from despair in the face of personal failure. Despair, he said, thrives on isolation and finality. The Hail Mary counters this by reopening the conversation every time it is prayed. No failure becomes definitive when the soul continues to ask for intercession. Padre Pio believed that many souls who appear lost are simply tired of asking. The Hail Mary teaches perseverance without exhaustion because it does not demand emotional intensity. It asks only presence. He also revealed that the prayer carries a unique blessing for parents and caregivers. When prayed for children, especially those who have strayed or suffer silently, the Hail Mary entrusts them to a protection beyond human control. Padre Pio believed that Mary guards such prayers with particular tenderness because she understands maternal anxiety. He reassured many parents that even when children resist guidance, the prayers offered for them continue to act invisibly. He also spoke about the prayer's effect on forgiveness. Forgiveness, he said, often fails because it is attempted through willpower alone. The Hail Mary introduces grace into this struggle. By praying it for those who have caused pain, the soul gradually loosens its grip on resentment without forcing resolution. Mary's intercession softens what cannot be forced. Padre Pio witnessed this transformation repeatedly in people who believed forgiveness was impossible for them. He also emphasized that the Hail Mary teaches the soul how to endure unanswered prayers. Not every prayer produces visible change, he said, but every prayer produces interior movement. The Hail Mary trains the soul to trust that movement, even when outcomes remain hidden. This trust protects against cynicism. He also revealed that the prayer has a communal dimension often overlooked. Every Hail Mary, he said, participates in the prayer of the entire Church across time. It unites the living, the suffering, and the blessed. This unity becomes especially evident in times of global crisis, when individual prayers feel insignificant. Padre Pio insisted that heaven does not measure prayer statistically. A single Hail Mary offered with sincerity participates fully in the prayer of the Church and therefore carries immense weight. He also taught that the prayer prepares the soul for suffering by anchoring it in love rather than explanation. When suffering cannot be understood, Mary's presence assures the soul that meaning still exists. This assurance sustains endurance. He also believed that the Hail Mary protects against spiritual pride, even in advanced devotion. Those who pray often, he said, are tempted to measure their progress. The Hail Mary resets the soul to humility every time it is prayed. It prevents the soul from claiming ownership over grace. Finally, Padre Pio summarized his lifelong witness with a truth he repeated quietly but firmly. The Hail Mary does not save because of its words, but because of the relationship it sustains. It keeps the soul turned toward heaven, even when everything else pulls it away. He believed that when history ends and souls stand before God, many will discover that what preserved them was not a dramatic conversion or heroic sacrifice, but a simple prayer repeated faithfully across years. A prayer whispered in weakness, in confusion, in love. A prayer that said again and again, "I cannot do this alone." And in that confession, Padre Pio believed, heaven opens,